We also have some additional functions that involve looking up things and some logic. So we have the if function, and it works just like the if statement that we've talked about before. Here we have equals if, and inside the parentheses we have three different arguments. We have a condition, a value if true, and a value if false. So what this function does is our condition here is going to be either true or false. So if the condition here is true, then it's going to return whatever value is in the value if true argument. Now, if the condition is false, it's going to return whatever is in the value if false part of it. Now, if the comparison involves text, like checking out if one letter is greater than or less than another letter, you need to make sure that the text is in quotes. Otherwise, the condition isn't going to work properly. And so what are the comparison operators? Most of them are very similar to what we've seen in other programming languages, but there are some differences. So to check if something is equal to another cell, we need to use just a single equal sign. If we want to check if something is not equal to something, we actually use the less than and then the greater than symbol, which is a little different than what we're used to. Most languages would use something more like an exclamation point and then equals to denote not equals to. But in Excel, we don't do that. Why, I honestly don't know, but we use the less than and then greater than symbol. To check if something is less than, we would use the less than symbol. Greater than would be the greater than symbol. Less than or equal to would be the less than or equal to symbols. And then greater than or equal to would be the greater than and then the equal symbols. The next function we're going to take a look at is a little bit more involved, so we need to take a couple of minutes to explain this. This is called the VLOOKUP function. There are three main arguments and a fourth optional argument. So the idea with this is that we're going to have some table. So that's going to be our second argument. This is going to be a range that specifies, when I say a table, I'm talking about a subsection of the spreadsheet that has some rows and some columns. It's not going to be like an entire spreadsheet. It could be an actual table, but it doesn't have to be. But it's going to be some range of cells. And what we're going to do is we're going to look up a value in this table range. Now, it could be one of the columns. We're not worried about which one it is. But usually it's going to be the leftmost column, but doesn't always have to be, but normally we would do it as the leftmost column. But what we're going to do is we're going to look up a value, and there's going to be corresponding values in that same row. So I mean, we have multiple columns, and there's going to be a value, so that's going to correspond to a row. And what we want to do is we want to display a value on that same row based on the value that we looked at. So maybe I have like a table that has 10 rows, and maybe I'm going to pick the value in the 5th row. So I'm going to display a value in a different column, but on the same, that corresponds to that same row, that 5th row. So that's what we're basically doing here. And so the lookup value argument is the actual value that we're trying to look up. We're trying to see if this value actually exists in that table. The table range is the range that we talked about before, and the column index argument is the how many columns to the right do we actually want to pick. So where is this resulting column of values that we want to display? So we're going to search the leftmost column, and we have to assume that the values in this column are in ascending order. It has to be in ascending order. There's no other way around it. Now, if we find an exact match, we'll display the corresponding value in the column index. And if we don't find an exact match, what we do is we pick the largest value that is less than the lookup value. So we're either going to find an exact match, or if we don't find it, we're going to pick something that is the largest value that is less than the lookup value. So like, for example, a very common example of this would be to look up grade letters. So I could have a table that has the possible grade values in the first column. So like 0, 60, 70, 80, 90 would be like my minimum values for A, B, C, D, and F. And let's say I have the score 85. So I can look that up. And so what we're going to do is we're going to look in this column, and we're going to try to see if we find an 85. Well, 85 is not going to be in there because I have 0, 60, 70, 80, 90. I don't have 85 in there. But what I can do is pick the largest value that is less than 85. In that case, it's going to be 80. And I'm going to have a column in there that corresponds to the letter B, so I can have it output B.
Let's go ahead and try out examples of the if function and the VLOOKUP function in Excel. So I'm going to put a couple of values in here, 25 and 50. Yeah, actually, you know, I'm going to do something else. Change my mind. Let's do 0, 60, 70, 80, and then we'll put 90 down here. Okay. And then I'm going to do an if function here. So do equals and an if. So we have our logical test. So we can check to see if a certain value is greater than or something. So maybe I'll do something like if this value is greater than 50, then, so there's my condition. And then this value of true is what I would have to display if the value is true. So maybe I'll do like a 2. And the value of false, I could do 1. And sure enough, it's 2 because this value is greater than 50. Now, if I change this to like 25, it changes to 1, so it's a false. So let me change this back real quick. Actually, I had 70. Let's try a different example. If now we can do text as well. I can do something like, let me try something here. Let's say I have this cell equals hello. I think I can do this. I can do text, say yes, no. So right now it says no because A12 does not have the word hello in it. So let me try putting in hello, and it changes to yes because the text in here is hello. And notice that I had to use quotes to make that work. So if we're going to deal with text in here, I'd have to do quotes. Otherwise, it's going to do something really weird. Let me just try this real quick. It has no idea what hello is. It thinks it's some kind of cell reference, but that does not exist. So if you're wanting to deal with actual words and characters, you want to use quotes to make that work. But that's basically the idea of the if function. So you have some condition, it's true or false. This is the part that gets displayed if it's true. This is the part that gets displayed when it's false. Now let's try the VLOOKUP function. So I use these numbers intentionally because a very good example of VLOOKUP is displaying the letter grade of someone's score. So I'm going to put grade letters here, F, D, C, B, A. Yeah, there we go. And I'm going to do the VLOOKUP here. Actually, I'm going to do, let's do a score right here. So D2 will have the score, and we'll do the letter grade here. Okay, so let's say maybe you took a test and you got an 80%. Okay, so here I'm going to do my VLOOKUP function. So equals VLOOKUP. So it even gives you a description here. So it looks for a value in the leftmost column of a table and then returns a value in the same row of that column you specify. And then by default, the table must be sorted in ascending order. So what this is saying here is my lookup value. So this is going to be the value that I'm going to look up in this quote-unquote table. So that's going to be D2 in this case. And then my table array is going to be the range of cells that contains the values I'm going to look up and at least the values I'm going to display here. So in this case, this is going to be this entire cell range. And by habit, I want to make this absolute cell reference because, whoops, it should not be B6, it should be B5. There we go, that's better. Because if I were to copy this somewhere else, then that means my table array range will change. And we don't want that happening. And then my column index number is going to be the column, which column do I want to actually display? The leftmost column is going to be 0, the next one's going to be 1, and so forth. So I want to make this 1. And we're not going to worry about range lookup. Oh, I made a mistake. Actually, this should be column 2. My bad. There you go. That's better. Okay, yeah, so this is column 1, this is column 2. So we'll make that very clear here. Okay, so look what happened here. So my score was 80. So the idea with this is it's going to look up the first column and try to find 80. And since it found it in this row, it's going to display whatever is in the second column of this table, which is this right here. Now, if I change this again, if I make this 70, it's going to show C because it finds C. Now, what if this value is not in here? And this is where VLOOKUP is really nice. So let's say I do something like, I will say 63. show D. And why is that the case? Well, what we said before is if this value is not in the VLOOKUP range, then it's going to find the value or the largest value that is smaller than this one. So if it can't find 63, it's going to look for the value that is smaller than it, but it's the largest one that's smallest. So in this case, it's 60. So it's going to pick this value and then take the results in the other column. So it's going to display the D. So that's why we got D here. Now, what if I put something that's larger than this table? Well, that's also nice, because here 100 is larger than 90, so it's going to find the largest value in the table that is less than this value. So 90 would be the largest value. So sure enough, it displays A. And then there are a lot of examples where we can use VLOOKUP, but this is a very common example for showing how this works.